Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. My name is Njcaa, and I'm the Advising and Events Coordinator at the US-UK Fulbright Commission. We're delighted to be offering our first ever webinar on sports scholarships. This is a topic many students have questions about, and we're excited to have special guest and expert Marva Hall from College Prospects of America, who will be speaking today. Just to let you know how the webinar will work, I'll be moderating the webinar. I'll briefly explain a bit about Fulbright and what we do, and then introduce Marva, who will be speaking for about 20 minutes. When you think of questions, please just type them in the Q&A box. After Marva's done speaking, we'll have a little 30-second break. We'll get the questions in order, and then Marva will take some questions. And then at the end, I'll tell you a bit about some follow-up for after the webinar. So just to get started and tell you a little bit about the US-UK Fulbright Commission. We were established over 60 years ago in the aftermath of World War II by Senator Fulbright. We're a nonprofit organization, and we're funded by both the US and the UK governments. And we promote peace and cultural understanding through educational exchange. We are an Education USA Advising Center, so basically designated by the US Department of State as the official source of information on US study here in the UK. So that's a little bit about Fulbright. Now to tell you a little bit about our special guest, Marva Hall from College Prospects of America. Before I turn it over to her to tell you, what you really want to hear about, which is about sports scholarships. Marva is an American, and she's lived over England since 1975. She had a master's in education from the University of Southern California. She played basketball and tennis during her time at Seattle University, and played league softball and was a volunteer basketball coach at Seattle High School. Her main sporting interest now is tennis, and she is vice president of the Harpenden Lawn Tennis Club, where she was also vice chairman for 13 years and chairman for 4 years. So Marva has been in the business for quite a while, and she is definitely an expert on sports scholarships. We're very lucky to have her here today to speak with you. So I'm just going to turn it over to Marva now, and she's going to start talking to you about sports scholarships. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny, and all your team at the Fulbright Commission for inviting me to come to talk to you this evening. The easiest way to talk about sports scholarships is to do an overview. I have a few PowerPoint slides, and I will just go through them one by one, and obviously at any point, if anyone has a question, they can put that question forward, and I'll do my best to answer them at the end. First slide you see, this is intercollegiate sports. These are the sports that the National Collegiate Athletic Association or one of the other two sports governing bodies sponsor. If you have a little look, you'll see that everything in black and white are played by men and women. Everything in green, American football, baseball, and wrestling by men only, and the rest are sports that are sanctioned by the sports governing bodies for women only. If we move on to the next slide, I hope you can all read that. There are lots of other sports that are played in college, those with limited participants, and when I say limited, I'm talking about under 80 universities, whereas some of those sports on the first page may have 1,000 or more universities that play those sports, especially volleyball, women's basketball, men's basketball, and so on. So you can see the ones that are very specialist interests. So if there's any fencers out there, gymnasts, rifle shooters, skiers, men's volleyball players, or men or women water polo players, then you folks better be pretty good. In addition, we have what's called the Emerging Sports for Women. The National Collegiate Athletic Association, which is the main sports governing body, which I'll talk about in more detail in a minute, has decided to offer a number of sports for women only as emerging sports. And you can see these, again, very limited sports: archery, badminton, women's bowling, equestrian, and squash. A few schools offer these sports, may give some scholarships, but they tend to be the expensive Northeast schools that have a lot of money. and cost a lot of money to attend. So again, if you want to play one of those, you'd better be pretty good. And then I get a lot of questions about men's rugby in particular, and also men's rowing. These are sports that are played sometimes by hundreds of universities. They have their own leagues, their own regionals, their own national competitions, but they're not. Consequently, funding is limited. However, if a person ticks the right boxes, they're very academic, get a good score on the American entrance exam, they might find they can get some money. What is a sports scholarship? This is probably the first question everybody asks. The answer is that colleges are allowed a maximum of 100% of tuition and fees, housing, food, books, uniforms and kit, and all sports-related travel and expenses. And each sports team has a proscribed maximum number of full scholarships that they can offer. So for instance, a women's tennis team has 8 full scholarships maximum. A men's tennis team has 4.5 full scholarships. And most people do not get 100% scholarships unless they're very, very good. Some private schools can offer academic or need-based money or both to top up partial scholarships for those students who qualify, again, with good grades and high test scores. Now, there are 3 sports governing bodies. The National Collegiate Athletic Association is the biggest, the most important, and many people feel they have more power in America than God. And since everyone knows that God has a lot of power in America, it gives you a little idea how powerful is the NCAA. They require 5 different academic passes at GCSE or standard grade, and these must include English, maths, science, and what the Americans call a social studies subject, geography, modern studies, economics, sociology, or psychology. But some of the private schools that offer classical civilizations or anthropology, well, those would work as well. Now, they need an average of D for GCSEs. When I prepared this slide a couple of days ago, the answer for Scottish schools was 3, a C, but I've just taken sight of the new updated NCAA handbook, and they have now decided that a Scottish grade of 6 is the equivalent of an English C grade, or an American C grade. And the biggest stumbling block for a few people is that they stop studying at GCSE, they take a gap year, or they work on their sport. Unfortunately, if you want to go at 18 at your normal graduating time, you must continue your education by taking AS and then A-levels, a 2-year BTEC, an NVQ, Scottish Highers, or an IB. Once you stop studying, the Americans consider you a high school graduate, and then they give you 1 gap year maximum. Unless you're a tennis player, which effective August 11, from now on, they're only going to give tennis players 1 gap semester. So that would mean a 2011 tennis player who finishes their A-levels, gets their grades in August, would have to go out at the very latest eligibility issues. Well, let me go back one more. The NCAA has 3 divisions. Division 1 is the most important. Most household name universities are Division I schools, and most universities join a division based on where they want their football and basketball teams to play. So if they want to play big-time American football or big-time basketball, they become Division I. If a team, in order to be Division I, a team has got to sponsor a minimum of 15 sports, usually 9 for men, women, 6 for men, or 8 and 7 or something of that nature. A lot of smaller schools, mid-range state universities, do not want to play such high-powered basketball and football. In fact, they might not even have a football team. They opt to be Division II because they can get away with funding fewer sports, and also the maximum levels of scholarships they can offer are lower. And lastly, there are about 300 universities in the NCAA Division III. They have their own leagues, their own regionals, their own nationals. They tend to be smaller, many of the smaller, more academic schools, and they do not give any sports scholarships at all. However, they do offer financial packages, often good academic scholarships, sometimes even need-based money for foreign students who qualify. The second sports governing body has approximately 300 members. These people require that a British student or any student have they need two of the following three. They need a C average overall in their GCSEs and standard grades or higher. They do not specify set core subjects, so a person could take a whole range of vocational subjects and still go out. Or they need a passing entrance exam score, which we'll talk about in a minute, and or a LAT student was in the top half of his or her class. Any two will work. And lastly, the Njcaa. These are two-year community colleges, or some states call them junior colleges. They have no minimum entrance exam scores. They have no minimum pass-fails in subjects. They just require that students turn up and sit some kind of an exam, so an NVQ first would work. And this has been historically a very good way for good student athletes with limited academics or even limited finances to get on the education ladder, because they are very inexpensive, and after 2 years those students who do well can move on at year 3 to finish their final 2 years. The one little blight on the horizon is that the National Junior College Association has recently passed a ruling that is going to limit the number of international students that can play on any squad at any time in any team to 25% of the total squad, which effectively will be 2 golfers in the squad, 2 tennis players in the squad, 4 or 5 in the big team sports like track and field, swimming, soccer, and so on. So hitherto, many British kids went into junior colleges because they were cheap and cheerful, cheaper than going to a British university, and moved on. This is going to be a little bit more difficult after 2012. Now, we talked a little bit about entrance exams. The Scholastic Assessment Test, the SAT, is widely offered throughout the UK 6 times a year. There is a sliding scale based on a student's academics for the Njcaa Division 1. As you can see, if a student is a C student, C meaning American C, i.e. a British E student, or D or E student, they would need 1,010 out of a total score of 1,600 for maths and critical reading. A C student would need 820, and A student just about needs to turn up and put their name at the top of the paper. Having said that, an A student would want to go to a better caliber of university, and admissions officers might have rather stricter rules than the Njcaa. And again, the Njcaa Division 2 has a flat pass rate, 820. The NAIA, slightly higher, 860, but remember there's the 2 out of 3 rule for people who cannot get 860. And the Junior College Association, no minimum pass, they just want people to take the test. And the America, approximately 50 states in America, half the 50 states in America favor the ACT, half the SAT, but for international students, every university in the country will take either of them without a problem. Students who are good at science should seriously consider the ACT because that tests English, math, and science. So there are fewer venues, but they are trying hard, I understand, to bring more venues into the country for next year. Another question that I'm frequently asked, how good do I need to be? Well, how long is a piece of string? If there are 1,000 schools with basketball teams or 1,000 schools with volleyball teams, women's volleyball teams, how long is a piece of string? But in general, if you represent your country in whatever sport you play, and it is a sport that the British do well, so if you represent your country in downhill skiing, you might not be good enough unless you're an Olympic caliber athlete. But if you represent your country, on average, we would be looking at strong Njcaa Division 1 schools for you. Strong age group national, maybe 16, 18, Division 1 or high-level Division 2. a regional competitor, strong NCAA Division II, or the NAIA, the Small College Association. Going back to the NAIA, they have campuses, halls of residence, four-year degrees, but they tend to be 1, 2, or 3,000 students, whereas the NCAA tend to be 10, 20, 30, and up to 50,000 students. Now going back, county players, again it depends on the sport, but in general, Division II or NAIA. Club level depends on the standard. If somebody comes to me and says I was a YTS or a youth player for Tottenham Hotspur, that is a club that would put that boy or girl right up there at the top. If literally it is a little club where they play Saturday league football with the men, or they play for their local tennis club, or obviously it's going to depend on some other factors. And similarly, school level, I've got a young man whose school won the British schools, the English schools tennis championship last year, the Glanville Cup. They are now playing in the world schools, and they've made it to the final. So that's a rather better school than some school down the road where they barely have a team. So again, we would need to have a little look at the standard of the school. Lastly, girls don't usually need to be as good as boys because fewer girls play sports. I'm not telling any of you anything you don't know. And U.S. colleges are committed to gender equity. Gender equity is all about 50-50 pie, women and men getting a share of the sporting budget. And even though it's been a law for nearly 30 years that they have to have gender equity, there are still quite a number of universities that still have more scholarships for men than for women. Go figure. How to get a scholarship? Well, get headhunted by a college coach at a major British or European junior event, a U.S. camp, or showcase. I know for a fact that at least half a dozen coaches go to certain competitions, the British boys golf. They turn up for the Bank of England tournament the week before Wimbledon. For tennis, they often get in touch with the academies of pro clubs to see who's being cut, and so on and so forth. Those are high-profile players, and they often get headhunted. Alternatively, you can get on the internet and contact college coaches directly, but if you do, you must make sure that you match their level, both of sport and academics, and ideally you need a video link that you can send them. Alternatively, or even as well as, you could use a marketing service, such as my company, College Prospects of America, or one of the many marketing services. This morning I Googled sports scholarships to the USA, and the first page we had Sporting Chance, Intuition, First Point, Penn Force, Pass for Soccer, Athletes USA, Sports Academy USA, SportsScholarships.com, College Sports Scholarships USA, United Sports USA, Pro Dream. They weren't on there because they're specialist golf, but they're also Intuition, and of course we at College Prospects. So a few questions you need to ask marketing services. How long have they been in business? Obviously, if they've been in business for a number of years, they are more likely to still be there when your son or daughter or you yourself are ready to go to university. Also mail profiles to coaches and do updates. Next question, do they charge colleges for their prospect information? If they do, one must ask themselves, who's the client? Me or my son or daughter? Or the college is paying me? So that is a very important question you need to ask. Ask for contact details of past clients. Do they offer any guarantees? Now, on the face of it, you would think, oh, I only want to use a company that offers a guarantee. Unfortunately, the National Collegiate Athletic Association and the other sports governing bodies strictly prohibit any company from making a guarantee about any kind of scholarship at any place or any amount. And if they do so, both the student athlete and the university run the risk of being in violation of NCAA rules, having all the games that they played stripped from them, losing the rights to play at regionals and nationals. The NCAA does not allow anyone to make guarantees about the kind of scholarship they might win. A company can charge anything that they want, They can charge £10,000, and if you're daft enough to pay it, they're not breaking any rules. But to promise you that they will get you 100%, a 50%, even a 10% scholarship is breaking the rules. Ask how much they charge. They should be prepared to tell you right up front what their fee is. I'll tell you right now, our basic fee is £850, going up to £1,150. There are a lot of companies out there that go as high as $2,600. So ask how much they charge and what they do for the money. And lastly, will they assist with transfers for no extra fee? We have boys and girls who go to junior colleges. When they finish their 2 years, they want to move on. Sometimes the coaches are able to help them. Sometimes they don't bother. Those kids should be able to come back to the company that helps them and get a free help moving on to a 4-year school. Or sometimes there are reasons why somebody just doesn't work out. They're just too good for that team, and they want to move to a stronger team, or they decide they want to study a different course and that university doesn't offer it. And there are some very specific rules that are required to transfer, and you will definitely need some advice about that. Things I need to do that wants me. Now, when I say things I need to do, this isn't necessarily the exact order, but you'll need to do all these things. Find a coach who wants me. Take the SAT or the ACT. Fill in one or more application forms. And by the way, while you're filling in the application forms, you should ask the coach or the director of admissions if they will waive the application fee, which often they will for international students. You'll need to register for the NCAA or the NAIA Eligibility Center. Both of these can be minefields. All of your paperwork, your GCSEs or your Scottish standard grades, your SAT scores and so on, have got to be sent to these eligibility centers in the appropriate manner with all the right boxes ticked, I's dotted, T's crossed, or they'll just send them back. You need to complete a declaration of amateurism. Again, they will ask you every team you've ever played for, the contact detail of the coaches or the managers of those teams. Again, that's a real minefield for people who play sports where they play a lot of teams, tennis, team soccer, and so on. You'll need to request an I-20, which is the fancy word for an immigration document. You'll need to complete the U.S. Embassy's DS-160 visa application form. You'll need to complete the SEVIS form. You'll need to phone the embassy for an appointment. You'll need to bring all the right documents to the interview, at least a week, preferably more like a month before you fly to it. But if you're confused, get professional help. Whether it's me or somebody else or a friend who's studied in America and knows about college sport. I've had kids whose older brothers have been headhunted by universities. The boy has gone out, played his sport, and they've come along with their second son or their second daughter and have said, that was a nightmare. I don't want to do it by myself again. So if you're going to do it yourself, be prepared for a lot of hard work and a lot of research. And at the end of the day, you probably know as much as I do, and you can probably set up a new company and join everybody on the Google search. That's about all I have to say.